I bought the house because nobody else wanted it. It had been sitting empty for almost 3 years, tucked behind a line of old trees at the edge of a small town. The auction listing called it a historic property requiring extensive renovation. That was a polite way of saying the place was falling apart. The windows were cracked, the porch leaned slightly to one side, and weeds had taken over most of the backyard. But the price was ridiculously low. I had been looking for a place where I could start over, and the house seemed like a bargain. The auctioneer mentioned one strange detail before the bidding started. The previous owner had left almost everything behind. Furniture, books, dishes, old photographs. Nobody had wanted to deal with it. I didn't care. I won the house for less than I had expected to spend. The first evening, I walked through every room with a flashlight. The downstairs had a kitchen, dining room, living room, and a small office. Upstairs were 3 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. Everything smelled like dust and old wood. I found myself strangely drawn to the hallway at the end of the second floor. There was a narrow section of wall between the master bedroom and the bathroom. It looked different from the rest. The wallpaper was newer. I ran my hand across it. There was a hollow sound. I knocked again. Hollow. I thought there might be old pipes behind it. I ignored it. That night, I slept in the smallest bedroom because the master bedroom needed too much cleaning. Around 2 in the morning, I woke up to a sound downstairs. A soft clicking noise. Then silence. I grabbed my phone and walked downstairs. The kitchen was empty. The back door was locked. I checked the living room. Nothing. Then I heard the clicking again. It was coming from the office. I opened the door. An old desk sat against the wall. On top of it was a small metal box. I was certain it hadn't been there earlier. The box was open. Inside was a single key. Attached to the key was a handwritten tag. Basement. I frowned. There was no basement listed in the auction documents. I had checked the property plans before buying the house. There was a crawl space beneath the kitchen, but no basement. I took the key anyway. The next morning, I started cleaning. By noon, I had moved most of the furniture out of the hallway. That's when I noticed something strange. The floorboards beneath the wallpapered wall were slightly different. I measured the hallway. Then I measured the outside wall. The numbers didn't match. There was about 8 feet of missing space. 8 feet. Inside my house. I stood there staring at the wall. There was a room behind it. I called the auction company. They told me the house had been inspected before the sale. No hidden room was mentioned. I called the county office. They checked the original blueprint. Nothing. The house was supposed to have 3 bedrooms upstairs. No extra room. I decided to remove a small section of wallpaper. Behind it was a wooden panel. I pushed it. It didn't move. Then I noticed a tiny keyhole. The key from the metal box fit perfectly. I turned it. There was a loud click. The entire wooden panel moved inward. Behind it was a narrow staircase. I stood there for several seconds. The stairs disappeared into darkness. I turned on my flashlight. The staircase went down farther than it should have. Much farther. I counted 23 steps before reaching a small landing. At the bottom was a door. There was no handle. Only another keyhole. I used the same key. The door opened. The room beyond was completely untouched. Dust covered everything. There was an old wooden table in the center. A chair. Several shelves. And dozens of cardboard boxes. But what caught my attention was the wall. Someone had covered it with photographs. Hundreds of them. Most showed the house. Some were taken from outside. Some showed rooms inside. But several photographs showed people standing in the backyard. I recognized one person. The previous owner. A woman named Alara Voss. I had seen her photograph in the auction documents. She had owned the property for almost 40 years. But then I noticed something that made my stomach tighten. Some photographs showed the house from only a few years ago. The most recent one had been taken less than 6 months earlier. Alara had died 12 years ago. Someone had been inside this room after her death. I walked closer to the photographs. There were pictures of strangers. Children. Families. People standing in front of the house. Then I found one photograph of myself. I dropped my flashlight. The photograph showed me standing outside the house. It had been taken the week before I bought it. I was wearing the same jacket I had worn when I visited the property for the first time. Someone had been watching me before I ever owned the house. I turned toward the door. It was still open. But I suddenly felt like I wasn't alone. I heard a soft sound behind me. A floorboard creaked. I turned around. Nothing. Then I noticed something written on the wooden table. A single sentence. You were supposed to find this room last. I stood completely still. Because underneath that sentence was another line. my full name, and beneath my name was tomorrow's date. I stared at my name written on the table. For several seconds, I couldn't move. The date beneath it was tomorrow. I checked my phone. It was already almost midnight. Whoever had written that message knew I would find the room. And somehow, they knew exactly when. I took several photographs of the table and the walls before touching anything else. Then I noticed a small drawer built into the desk. It was locked. I tried the key from the basement door. It didn't fit. There was another key sitting inside an old glass jar on one of the shelves. I picked it up. This one was tiny. It fit the drawer. Inside was a folded letter. The envelope had my name on it. Not my nickname. Not my initials. My full name. I opened it. The handwriting was shaky. If you found this room before the date written on the table, leave immediately. I looked at the date again. Tomorrow. The letter continued. If you found it after the date, don't trust anyone who claims to know why the room exists. I read it twice. Then I found the signature. Alara Voss. The previous owner. The woman who had died 12 years ago. I couldn't understand how she could have written a letter addressed to me, unless the letter had been prepared years earlier. But why me? I searched the room for another clue. There were boxes labeled by year. 1998, 1999, 2000, 2001, 2002. Then one box had my birth year written on it. I opened it. Inside were newspaper clippings. Most were about missing people. Some were about families who had suddenly moved away. Others were about unexplained property sales. I kept looking. Then I found a photograph. It showed Alara standing beside a young couple. I recognized the woman immediately. She was my mother. I sat down. My mother had never mentioned Alara. Not once. I searched through the box again. There was another photograph. This one showed my mother holding me as a baby. Alara stood beside her. On the back was a date. The same month I was born. I called my mother. She didn't answer. I called again. Still nothing. Then I remembered something she had once said. Never go near that old house. At the time, I thought she was talking about another property. Now I wasn't sure. I left the hidden room and locked the panel behind me. I didn't sleep that night. At 7 in the morning, my mother finally called. Her first question was strange. Did you buy the house? I said yes. There was a long silence. Then she asked, did you find the room? My heart dropped. You knew about it? I knew there was a room. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't think you'd ever find it. I asked her about Alara. My mother said she had known her when she was younger. Alara had helped our family during a difficult period. I asked why there were photographs of me. My mother wouldn't answer. Mom, someone was watching me before I bought this house. I know. How? Another silence. Then she said, because I was the one who asked them to. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You asked someone to watch me? Not you. She corrected herself. The house. I asked why. She said Alara had left something there many years ago. Something my family had promised to protect. What? I don't know. You're lying. I wish I were. My mother told me to leave the house immediately. I asked her why. She said there were people who had been waiting for someone to open that hidden room. Who? She whispered. I don't know if they're still looking. Then the call ended. I stood in the kitchen staring at my phone. A few minutes later, someone knocked on the front door. I looked through the window. An older man stood on the porch. He introduced himself as Marlowe. He said he lived nearby. I heard someone bought the house. I asked how he knew. He smiled. Everyone knows this house. There was something uncomfortable about the way he said it. I asked if he knew Alara. His expression changed. She was a complicated woman. Did she have a hidden room? He stared at me. Then he asked, did you find it? I didn't answer. He stepped closer. You shouldn't have. I asked what was inside. He shook his head. Things that were never meant to be found. Then he turned to leave. Before he reached the gate, he stopped. You need to understand something. I waited. Alara didn't build that room to hide something from people. Then why? He looked back at the house. She built it to hide people. I felt a chill. People? Marlowe nodded. People who needed somewhere to disappear. Then he walked away. I stood at the door watching him. I wanted to believe he was just an old man telling stories. But something about his face told me he was afraid. That afternoon, I went back into the hidden room. I opened more boxes. Inside were letters from people who had stayed in the house. Most had no last names. Some were written by young women. Some by teenagers. One letter said, she told me to stay here until it was safe. Another, I don't know who she was hiding me from. Another, she promised she'd come back. The final letter in the box was different. It was written by my mother. I recognized her handwriting immediately. I brought him here because there was nowhere else. I read the next line. He is too young to understand what happened. Then, if they find him, tell him nothing. I froze. The letter was dated 30 years ago. I hadn't even been born yet. I read it again. My mother had brought someone to the house before I was born. Someone she called him. I searched the room for another clue. Behind one of the shelves, I found a small wooden box. Inside was an old hospital bracelet. A child's bracelet. The name printed on it was unfamiliar, but the date was the same as the date my mother had written the letter. I looked at the bracelet, then at the photographs, then at the hidden staircase. Suddenly, I realized the room wasn't just a secret basement. It was an archive of people who had disappeared, and somehow my family was connected to all of them. That evening, I decided to leave. I packed a bag and walked toward my car. Before I could open the door, I noticed something on the windshield. A photograph. It showed me standing outside the hidden room. The picture had been taken that morning. Someone had been inside the house while I was there. On the back was a message. Your mother told you to leave. I turned the photograph over. There was another line. But she never told you what you're hiding. I looked toward the house. A light was glowing in the upstairs window. I knew I had turned every light off. Then I saw a shadow move behind the curtain. Someone was inside. I reached for my phone. Before I could call anyone, my mother's name appeared on the screen. I answered. She didn't say hello. She whispered, "Whatever you do, don't go upstairs." I looked at the house. The light upstairs went out. Then I heard the front door slowly open. The front door slowly opened by itself. I stood beside my car, staring at the dark entrance. My mother was still on the phone. "Are you there?" I whispered, "Yes." "Get in your car and drive away." "Mom, someone is inside." "I know." That answer frightened me more than anything else. "How do you know?" She didn't respond. I heard a shaky breath on the other end. Then she said, "Because the same thing happened to me." I looked at the upstairs window. "Did you ever come inside this house?" "Yes." "When?" "Before you were born." I asked her about the hidden room. She told me she had been there once. She had been 19 years old. Ilara had brought her there after something happened to my mother's family. My mother wouldn't explain what. She only said that Ilara had protected several people in that house. People who were trying to disappear. I asked who they were hiding from. My mother said, a man named Corvin. The name meant nothing to me. Then she said something that did. "Your father knew him." I felt my stomach tighten. "My father?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because Corvin was looking for him too." The call suddenly became quiet. Then I heard my mother whisper, "He knows you bought the house." The line went dead. I got into my car. I was about to drive away when I saw movement upstairs again. A figure was standing behind the curtain. Then the curtain moved. The person disappeared. I started the engine. But instead of leaving, I found myself staring at the house. Something inside me kept saying that if I drove away now, I might never understand why my family had been connected to this place. So I grabbed my flashlight and went inside. The house was completely silent. I locked the front door behind me. I checked the living room. Empty. Kitchen. Empty. Office. Empty. Then I heard footsteps above me. Slow. One step at a time. I walked toward the staircase. My mother's warning echoed in my head. "Don't go upstairs." I almost turned around. Then I saw something on the floor. A small envelope. My name was written on it. I opened it. Inside was a photograph of my mother at 19. She was standing outside this exact house. Beside her was Ilara. And behind them stood a young man. I recognized him immediately. My father. On the back of the photograph was a sentence. "They met here for the first time." I stared at it. My father had always told me he met my mother at college. He had lied. I heard another sound upstairs. This time, a door slammed. I climbed the stairs. The hallway was dark. The master bedroom door was slightly open. I pushed it. Nobody was there. But the room had been disturbed. The closet doors were open. Drawers had been pulled out. Someone had searched the room. Then I noticed a section of the floor near the bed. One board was raised. I lifted it. There was another hidden compartment. Inside was a small notebook. Ilara's handwriting filled the pages. Most entries were about people she had helped. But one name appeared repeatedly. My father. I read the first entry. "He came tonight. He says Corvin found him." The next page. "He says they want the child." Another. "He says the child isn't safe anywhere." I kept reading. Then I found an entry dated the year I was born. "He brought the baby here." I stopped. My father had brought a baby to this house. But I was born that year. Was that baby me? I turned the page. No, not his child. I froze. The next sentence was worse. He says the baby's real parents are dead. I sat on the floor. If that baby wasn't me, then who was it? I kept reading. Ilara had written that my father was trying to protect a child who wasn't biologically related to him. The child's identity had been changed. The same thing had happened to several people connected to the house. I turned another page. Then I found my name. Not the name I use now. My full legal name. Next to it was another name. A child's name. I recognized it from the hospital bracelet. I suddenly understood. The bracelet wasn't connected to someone who had stayed in the house before I was born. It was connected to me. My identity had been changed when I was a baby. I wasn't who I thought I was. I called my mother. She answered immediately. Where are you? I'm in the house. She went silent. You went upstairs. Yes. I told you not to. I found Ilara's notebook. My mother started crying. Then you know. Know what? That your father wasn't your father. I couldn't speak. She explained that my biological parents had died shortly before I was born. My father had been their friend. He took me because he promised them he would keep me safe. Ilara helped him. My mother became involved later. They created a new identity for me. They wanted me to grow up believing I had a normal family. I asked why. Because Corvin was looking for you. Why me? My mother said she didn't know. But Ilara did. I asked what she had written. My mother said, look at the last page. I opened the notebook. The final page had only one sentence. The child carries the key. I stared at it. Then I heard someone behind me. That's what everyone believed. I turned around. Marlo was standing in the doorway. I stepped back. How did you get inside? He ignored the question. You shouldn't have opened that notebook. Who are you? He looked at the pages. I was one of the children Ilara protected. I couldn't believe him. You were a child? Years ago. He told me Ilara had helped him escape Corvin. He had been 14. She hid him in this house for 6 months. Then she helped him leave town. He eventually returned and stayed nearby because he promised to watch over the property. I asked why he knew so much. Because I was there. Where? The night your father brought you here. I froze. What happened? Marlo looked at me. Your father didn't bring you here to hide you. I felt confused. Then why? He brought you here because someone was already looking for you. Who? Marlo hesitated. Your biological father. I stared at him. My biological father was dead. That is what they wanted everyone to believe. My heart started pounding. Marlo told me the truth was much more complicated. My biological father had disappeared before I was born. He wasn't dead. He had been hiding. He knew Corvin was coming. He gave me to my father's friend because he believed that was the only way I would survive. Then he disappeared. I asked where he was now. Marlo looked toward the window. He came back. When? 3 years ago. Where is he? Marlo didn't answer. Instead, he walked to the wall and removed an old painting. Behind it was a narrow metal door. He unlocked it. Inside was a small room. There was a chair, a desk, and a telephone. The phone suddenly rang. Marlo stared at it. I answered. A man's voice came through. Kellen. I didn't recognize him. Who are you? He said. Your father. I couldn't speak. He continued. I've been waiting for you to find the room. I looked at Marlo. He was crying. Then the voice said, there's something your mother never told you. What? You were not the child Corvin was looking for. I felt a chill. Then who was? The man paused. Then he said, your sister. The line went dead. I kept the phone against my ear long after the call ended. Your sister. Those 2 words were louder than everything else in the room. I looked at Marlo. You knew. He didn't answer. That was enough. You knew I had a sister? Marlo lowered his eyes. I knew there was another child. That's not what I asked. He finally looked at me. I didn't know whether she was alive. I felt like the floor had shifted beneath me. My mother had never mentioned a sister. My father had never mentioned a sister. Even the documents I had grown up with contained nothing about another child. I asked Marlo where she was. He told me he didn't know. But your biological father might. I grabbed the phone again. The line was dead. I tried calling back. Nothing. Then I noticed something on the desk. A small cassette recorder. Beside it was a note. Play this before you leave. I pressed the button. A man's voice filled the room. My biological father's voice. He introduced himself as Arlen. He said he had spent most of his life running because of Corvin. But he wasn't running for himself. He was protecting 2 children. Me and my sister. He explained that we had been born only a few minutes apart. Twins. I stopped the recording. I couldn't breathe. Twins. The idea sounded impossible. My mother had always told me I was an only child. Arlen continued. He said Corvin had discovered that my family was connected to an old group of people who had been helping children disappear from dangerous situations. Corvin believed one of the twins carried information that could expose him. He didn't know which child. So he searched for both. Arlen made a decision. He took me to Alara. My sister was taken somewhere else. The children were given different identities. Arlen disappeared. My mother helped maintain the new identities. Alara protected me. But there was one problem. Corvin eventually discovered that one of the twins was living in the yellow house. That's when Arlen returned. He tried to move me again. But before he could, Corvin found him. Arlen escaped. I was left with Alara. I asked Marlo what happened next. He said Alara moved me to another family. That's how I ended up living with the people I believed were my parents. My entire childhood had been carefully constructed. Not to deceive me. To keep me alive. I sat down. For the first time, I understood why every old photograph seemed slightly wrong. Why dates never matched. Why my mother avoided certain questions. Why my father never liked talking about my birth. There had always been something missing. A sister. A whole part of my life. I asked Marlo if she was still alive. He said he believed she was. Where? I don't know. Then he handed me another envelope. This came 3 years ago. The envelope had no name. Only a symbol. A small circle with a line through the center. I opened it. Inside was a photograph. A young woman standing outside a train station. She looked familiar. Not because I had seen her before. Because she looked like me. Same eyes. Same expression. Same small scar near the eyebrow. On the back of the photograph was one word. Leora. I stared at it. My sister had a name. Leora. Then I noticed something else. The photograph had been taken 3 years ago. I looked at Marlo. Why didn't you show me this? Because I was told not to. By whom? Your mother. I called her immediately. She answered after the first ring. Mom, I know about Leora. She went completely silent. Then she whispered. Where did you hear that name? Marlo showed me the photograph. My mother began crying. I asked her why she had hidden my sister from me. She said she had promised Arlen. Promised what? That if Leora ever came back, I would keep you away from her. I couldn't understand. Why? Because she was being followed. By Corvin? No. That answer stopped me. Then who? My mother said she didn't know. She only knew that someone had been searching for Leora for years. She told me Leora had contacted her once. 3 years earlier. She had asked for help. My mother had refused. I couldn't believe it. You refused to help my sister? I was afraid. Of what? That she would lead them back to you. I ended the call. I was angry, confused, and hurt. But something else bothered me. The photograph of Leora. She was standing outside a train station. Behind her was a sign. I zoomed in. The station was only 2 hours away. I told Marlo I was going there. He tried to stop me. I refused. I drove there that evening. The station was almost empty. I showed the photograph to an older employee. He looked at it for several seconds. Then his expression changed. You know her? He nodded. She used to come here every month. Where did she go? He pointed toward the old waiting room. She always waited for someone. Who? He shook his head. She never said. I walked into the waiting room. There were several benches. A broken vending machine. An old clock. And a small wooden locker. The number on it was 27. My heart started pounding. I opened it. Inside was a notebook. The first page had my name. The second had Leora's. The third had a sentence. We were separated to keep us safe. I turned the page. There were dates. Locations. Names. Someone had been tracking both of us. Then I saw something that made me stop. One of the locations was the house I had just bought. Another was the hospital where I was born. Another was the town where I grew up. Someone had followed my life for decades. I turned another page. There was a recent entry. Leora will return to the house when Kellen opens the hidden room. The date beside it was tomorrow. I looked at the clock. Tomorrow was only a few hours away. I closed the notebook. Then I heard footsteps behind me. I turned. A woman stood at the entrance. She looked directly at me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said my name. Kellen. I couldn't move. I knew her face. Not from a photograph. From my own reflection. She walked closer. I've been looking for you for years. I whispered. Leora. She nodded. Then she looked at the notebook in my hands. You found it. I asked her why she had been searching for me. She said, because I finally discovered why they separated us. Why? She looked around the empty station. Because one of us was supposed to disappear. Who? She stared directly at me. You. I felt my stomach drop. She explained that when we were babies, someone had made a decision. One child would be hidden. The other would be allowed to live normally. But there was one thing neither of us knew. The person who made that decision wasn't Arlen. It wasn't my mother. It wasn't Alara. It was Corvin. He had deliberately allowed me to grow up. Because he believed that one day I would lead him to something hidden inside the house. I asked what. Leora looked at me. The room wasn't built to hide people. She took my hand. It was built to hide something from you. Then she gave me a small brass key. I recognized the symbol engraved on it. It matched the symbol on the envelope. Leora whispered. The room beneath the house isn't the real secret. She pointed toward the station exit. The real secret is underneath the house next door. I stared at her. The house next door? She nodded. And the person living there knows exactly who our father really was. I looked through the station window toward the parking lot. The house next door. For some reason, that sentence bothered me more than anything else Leora had said. I had spent days searching my own house, convinced the hidden room contained the answer. Now I was beginning to wonder if the house had been designed to lead me somewhere else. Who lives there? I asked. Leora hesitated. Her name is Sable. Do you know her? I've met her once. Is she connected to Corvin? Leora shook her head. She was connected to our father. I looked at the brass key in my hand. What is this open? Leora didn't answer. Instead, she asked me to follow her. We left the station and drove back toward the old neighborhood. It was almost midnight when we reached the house beside mine. I had never paid much attention to it. It was smaller than mine, with dark green shutters and a garden that looked carefully maintained. There was one light on upstairs. Leora parked across the street. She knows we're coming, she said. How? She always knows. We walked toward the front door. Before we could knock, it opened. An elderly woman stood there. She had silver hair and a calm expression. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she smiled. You have his eyes. I asked who she meant. She stepped aside. Come in. The house smelled like old books and cedarwood. Every wall was covered with photographs. Some showed people I had never seen. Others showed the neighborhood decades earlier. Then I noticed one photograph that made me stop. It showed my biological father, Arlen. Standing beside him was Sable. They looked much younger. Behind them was the yellow house. Sable noticed me staring. He trusted me. Why? Because I was his sister. I looked at Leora. She nodded. Sable was our aunt. She told us that Arlen had been investigating Corvin long before we were born. He had discovered that Corvin wasn't simply hiding people or manipulating records. He had been searching for something specific. A ledger. A handwritten record containing the names of everyone who had helped children disappear. Corvin wanted it because it could expose him. Arlen found the ledger first. Then he hid it. Where? I asked. Sable looked at the brass key in my hand. You already have the answer. I showed her the key. She pointed toward the floor. The symbol on that key belonged to Arlen. She explained that he had used the symbol to mark places where he had hidden important things. The hidden room beneath my house was one of those places. But it wasn't the final location. I asked why Corvin had been interested in me. Sable said he believed Arlen had hidden the ledger inside something connected to me. A memory? She nodded. Not exactly. She walked to an old cabinet and removed a small wooden box. Inside was a cassette tape. She placed it on the table. This is your father's last recording. I stared at it. My hands were shaking. I pressed play. Arlen's voice filled the room. If you're listening to this, then either I failed or Kellen finally found the house. I looked at Leora. The recording continued. I need you to understand one thing. Corvin was never searching for the ledger because of the names inside it. There was a pause. He was searching because the final page contains a name he has spent decades trying to erase. I stopped the tape. What name? Sable answered. His own. I pressed play again. Arlen explained that Corvin had once been part of the same group as my grandfather. He had helped protect children. But something changed. He began using the records for his own purposes. He discovered that controlling someone's identity meant controlling their entire future. He created false histories. He manipulated documents. He separated families. Eventually, the others turned against him. My grandfather collected evidence. Arlen helped him. and Corvin became determined to destroy every record that could expose him. Then Arlen said something that changed everything. The ledger is not inside the house. He paused. It is inside the person who owns it. I looked at Leora. What does that mean? She whispered. I didn't understand. Sable explained that when I was a baby, Arlen had hidden a small memory card inside an object I carried. An object that had remained with me throughout my childhood. I immediately thought about the blue box. But Sable shook her head. Not the box. The hospital bracelet? No. I searched my memory. There was one thing I had never thrown away. A small wooden pendant. My grandmother had given it to me when I was 5. I had worn it until I was a teenager. Then I put it away. I had brought it with me when I moved into the house. I ran upstairs. Leora followed. I found the pendant inside an old suitcase. There was a tiny screw on the back. I opened it. Inside was a micro SD card. My heart started racing. We connected it to Sable's computer. There was only one file. A scanned page. It contained hundreds of names. At the bottom was Corvin's name. But underneath it was another name. My mother. I stared at the screen. Why is her name there? Sable looked uncomfortable. Because she was part of the group. She helped them. No. She knew about the ledger? Yes. Then why did she hide it from me? Sable didn't answer. Leora did. Because she was afraid of what would happen if you knew the whole truth. I called my mother. This time, she answered immediately. I asked her about the ledger. She started crying. I knew you'd find it eventually. Why didn't you tell me? Because your father made me promise. What promise? To keep you away from the people who were looking for the ledger. I asked her if Corvin was still alive. She didn't answer. That silence told me enough. Mom, he's alive. The room went silent. Leora looked at me. Sable closed her eyes. My mother continued. He's been watching the house. I asked how long. Since before you bought it. I suddenly remembered the photograph of me outside the house. Someone had been watching me before the auction. But if Corvin had been watching me, why had he allowed me to buy the property? My mother gave me the answer. Because he wanted you to open the room. I felt cold. He wanted me to find the ledger. Yes. Then why hasn't he taken it? My mother whispered. Because he doesn't know where it is. I looked at the micro SD card. We have it. My mother went silent. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. No, Kellen. What? That isn't the ledger. I stared at the screen. What do you mean? The real ledger has never been scanned. I looked at Sable. She looked terrified. My mother continued. The file you found is a copy of the index. Then where's the real one? She whispered. Under the house. I looked at Leora. The hidden room? No. My mother took a shaky breath. Under the house next door. Sable suddenly stood up. We need to leave. A sound came from outside. A car door closing. Then another. Leora moved toward the window. 3 cars had stopped outside. Nobody got out. Then every light in the neighborhood went off at once. Sable looked at me. He found us. A moment later, someone knocked on the front door. 3 slow knocks. Then a man's voice came through the wood. Kellen. I recognized it. Corvin. He spoke calmly. You've spent enough time looking for answers. Then he said something that made Leora's face turn pale. Now I'm going to tell you why your sister was never supposed to survive. The door handle slowly began to turn. The door handle stopped moving. Nobody in the room spoke. Leora was standing beside me, completely still. Sable reached beneath the table and pulled out an old metal box. Whatever happens, she whispered, don't let him take this. I looked at the box. What is it? The key to the real ledger. Before I could ask anything else, the front door opened. Corvin stepped inside. He was older than I had imagined. He didn't look dangerous. That was what frightened me most. He looked like an ordinary old man who had simply arrived to have a conversation. His eyes moved from Sable to Leora and finally to me. So, he said quietly, Arlen's children are finally together. I asked him why he had been watching me. He smiled. Because your father spent his entire life believing he could outsmart me. You knew where I was. I always knew. Then why didn't you come after me? Corvin looked toward the window. Because I needed you to find the house. Leora stepped forward. You used him. Corvin looked at her. I used everyone. Sable opened the metal box. Inside was a small brass key. Corvin's expression changed immediately. Give me that. Sable closed the box. No. Corvin took one step forward. You have no idea what you've been protecting. Sable looked at me. She knows more than you think. Corvin's face hardened. Then he looked at me. Your father told you I was looking for a ledger. Yes. He lied. I asked what he was really looking for. Corvin pointed at me. You. I felt my stomach tighten. You've been saying that for years. Why? Because you are the only person who can open the final archive. I didn't understand. He explained that the ledger had been designed so nobody could access it without a specific piece of information. That information had been given to me when I was a baby. Not written down. Not stored in a computer. It was a phrase. A phrase only my biological father and Alara knew. And according to Corvin, I had heard it as a child. I asked what the phrase was. He smiled. You don't remember. Leora stepped beside me. Neither do you. Corvin looked at her. You were always the more difficult one. Leora's expression changed. You remember me. I remember both of you. Then he said something that made me realize the story was even stranger than I thought. Your parents didn't separate you because of me. I looked at him. They separated you because of what happened before I ever found out about you. I asked him what he meant. He said Arlen had discovered that the ledger contained information about a group of people who had been secretly relocating children for decades. Some were escaping abusive families. Some were witnesses. Some were children whose parents were involved in dangerous organizations. The group believed they were protecting them. But Arlen discovered that someone had started selling those identities. That person wasn't Corvin. It was someone inside the group. Someone my mother trusted. I immediately thought of the names in the index. My mother's name was there. Corvin noticed my expression. You finally understand. I shook my head. My mother didn't betray anyone. She didn't know. Then who did? Corvin looked at Sable. Sable went pale. I turned toward her. What? She didn't speak. Corvin answered for her. Your aunt. Sable shook her head. No. You sold the identities. I never sold anything. You gave them away. Sable looked at me. I was trying to save people. Corvin laughed. That's what everyone says. Sable explained that years ago, she had discovered someone was tracking the children. She created false records to protect them. But some of those records were later stolen. She didn't know who took them. Arlen believed Sable had betrayed the group. That's why he stopped trusting her. But Sable insisted she had been framed. I asked Corvin who actually stole the records. He looked at me. Your father. I couldn't believe it. My father. Arlen stole the records because he believed he could use them to find the person responsible. Leora interrupted. Then why did he hide the ledger? Corvin smiled. Because he realized the person responsible was already dead. I stared at him. Who? Corvin didn't answer. Instead, he walked toward the window. Then he pointed toward the yellow house. Your grandfather. The room became silent. I couldn't speak. My grandfather had always been the hero in every story. The man who protected people. The man who helped my mother. The man who supposedly fought Corvin. But Corvin claimed he had been the person selling identities. I didn't know what to believe. Then Leora whispered. That doesn't make sense. Corvin looked at her. Your grandfather wasn't trying to sell children. He paused. He was trying to find someone. Who? Your biological mother. I looked at Leora. She stared back at me. We had always believed our mother was dead. But now everything was uncertain. I asked Corvin if she was alive. He said he didn't know. Then he looked at the brass key. But the ledger knows. He suddenly moved toward Sable. She tried to hide the box. Corvin grabbed her arm. I stepped forward. Leave her alone. He stopped. For the first time, I saw anger in his face. You really don't understand what you've inherited. I inherited a house. No. He looked at me. You inherited a promise. Before I could respond, Leora pulled me toward the back door. We ran. Sable followed. Behind us, Corvin shouted. We crossed the garden and entered the yellow house. I remembered the hidden staircase. We rushed downstairs. The room was exactly as I had left it. But something had changed. One of the photographs was missing. The photograph of my mother. I looked around. Then I saw a small mark on the wall. The same symbol that had been on the brass key. I pressed it. A section of the wall moved. Behind it was a narrow passage. Leora looked at me. That's new. We entered. The passage led beneath the house. The air became colder. After several minutes, we reached a metal door. Sable inserted the brass key. The door opened. Inside was a small underground chamber. There were shelves filled with boxes. Hundreds of them. Each box had a name. Families. Children. Dates. Leora found her name. I found mine. We opened my box. Inside was a birth certificate. The name on it was different from the one I had grown up with. Then I found another document. It was signed by my biological mother. The signature was familiar. I had seen it before. On the letter from the hidden room. I looked at Leora. Our mother wasn't dead. She shook her head. No. Then we found a recent photograph. It showed a woman standing outside a small apartment. The date was only 6 months old. On the back was an address. My mother had been alive. She had been watching us. And there was one more photograph. This one showed her standing beside someone else. Someone I recognized. My own mother. The woman who had raised me. They had been meeting each other for years. I felt betrayed all over again. But before I could say anything, we heard footsteps coming from the passage. Corvin had followed us. Leora grabbed the photograph. Sable pointed toward another door. There's another way out. We ran through it. The passage opened into a small building behind the neighboring property. I turned around. Corvin was standing at the far end. He didn't chase us. He simply smiled. Then he said, "Now you know where your mother is." I looked at him. He continued, "But you still don't know why she left you." We escaped into the night. For the first time, I had proof that my biological mother was alive. But I also had a new question. Why had she allowed me to believe she was dead? And why had she been secretly meeting the woman who raised me? As we reached the car, my phone buzzed. There was a message from an unknown number. It contained only an address. I recognized the location immediately. It was the same address from the photograph. Then another message appeared. "Come alone if you want to meet your mother." I looked at Leora. She had received the same message. And beneath it was one final sentence. "Neither of you knows which mother you should trust." I stared at the message until the screen went dark. Neither of you knows which mother you should trust. Leora looked at me. "We're not going alone." I agreed. We drove toward the address together, with Sable following several minutes behind us. The building was an old apartment complex on the edge of town. Most of the windows were dark. Only one apartment had a light on. We climbed the stairs. Leora stopped outside the door. "I've been here before." "When?" 3 years ago. She looked nervous. "I came here looking for her. Our mother." Leora nodded. She opened the door, saw me, and told me to leave. "Why?" I didn't understand then. She looked at me. "I think I do now." Before we could knock, the door opened. A woman stood there. She was older than the photograph. Her hair was gray. Her face looked tired. But the moment I saw her, I knew. She was my biological mother. Leora stepped forward. "Mom." The woman covered her mouth. She started crying. Then she looked at me. "You have his eyes." I didn't know what to say. She invited us inside. The apartment was almost empty. There were no family photographs. No decorations. Just a table, 2 chairs, and several boxes. I asked her why she had stayed away. She said she had been afraid. Of Corvin. She shook her head. Of myself. That answer confused me. She explained that after we were born, she discovered that someone had been selling information about the children the group protected. She believed Arlen was responsible, but she didn't know the truth. She left because she thought staying near us would put us in danger. Then my other mother found her. The woman who raised me had contacted her years later. They had made a deal. She would stay hidden while my adoptive mother raised me. Leora asked why she had never contacted us. "She was protecting you." Leora shook her head. "No, she was protecting herself." Our mother looked down. "You're right." She admitted that fear had controlled her for years. Then she gave us a small notebook. This belonged to Arlen. I opened it. The first pages contained notes about Corvin. The later pages contained something else. A list of dates. Every date matched one of my birthdays. I looked at her. "Why did he write these?" She said he had been watching us from a distance. Every year, he checked that we were safe. The last entry was dated 3 years ago. Beside it was one sentence. "The house is ready." I immediately understood. The house I had bought wasn't random. Arlen had arranged for it to eventually come into my possession. But why? My biological mother told me there was something hidden beneath the property. Something even Corvin hadn't found. I asked what. She said, "The original ledger." I thought of the underground chamber. We found boxes. Not the ledger. She shook her head. "The real ledger is somewhere deeper." Then she looked at Leora. "You have the key." Leora reached into her pocket. She had been carrying a small brass key. The same symbol was engraved on it. Our mother told us the key didn't open a door. It opened a mechanism. We returned to the yellow house before sunrise. Inside the hidden room, we searched the walls. Nothing. Then Leora noticed a photograph of Arlen. It was slightly crooked. She moved it. Behind it was a metal plate. The brass key fit. A section of the floor opened. A narrow staircase descended beneath the house. We went down. The air smelled damp. At the bottom was a large underground room. There was a wooden table in the center, and on it was a black ledger. I reached for it. Before I could open it, someone spoke behind us. Don't. We turned. It was my adoptive mother. She was standing at the bottom of the stairs. I couldn't believe she had followed us. How did you find us? She looked at the ledger. Because I was the one who hid it. I asked why. She told us the truth. She had never been part of Corvin's organization. She had been working against it. When she met my biological mother, they were both trying to protect us. But there was one person neither of them trusted. Arlen. He had discovered the ledger and wanted to expose everyone. But he also wanted to use it to find Corvin. He disappeared before he could decide what to do. My adoptive mother took the ledger. She hid it inside the house. Then she created a false trail. The hidden room. The photographs. The notes. Everything had been designed to make sure only the right person would find it. Me. I asked why she had allowed me to buy the house. She smiled sadly. Because you were finally old enough. I looked at the ledger. What's inside? She said. Names. Whose names? Everyone who was involved. I opened it. The first pages were old. Names I didn't recognize. Then I saw my grandfather. Then Sable. Then Corvin. Then my biological mother. Then my adoptive mother. And finally Arlen. But there was another name. A name I had never seen before. Marlowe. I looked at my adoptive mother. He lied to me. She nodded. He wasn't simply one of Alara's rescued children. He worked for Corvin. I felt sick. Marlowe had been guiding me from the beginning. He had known about the hidden room. He had known about my sister. He had known where my father was. He had been giving me information piece by piece. But why? My adoptive mother opened the ledger to the final page. There was a handwritten note. Marlowe is not the danger. Underneath it was another sentence. The person he protects is. I looked at Leora. Who does he protect? Before anyone could answer, we heard footsteps above us. Then Marlowe's voice echoed through the hidden room. I think it's time you stopped reading. The lights went out. Leora grabbed my arm. My adoptive mother whispered. Whatever happens, don't give him the ledger. A flashlight appeared at the top of the stairs. Marlowe slowly came down. He wasn't alone. Someone was behind him. A woman. I couldn't see her face. Then she stepped into the light. I knew her immediately. She was the woman from the photographs. The woman who had been meeting my adoptive mother. The woman I had believed was my biological mother. But she wasn't. She looked at Leora, then at me, and said, I'm sorry you had to find out this way. Leora whispered. Who are you? The woman looked at the ledger. Then she said, I'm Alara's daughter. I felt the room spin. Alara had supposedly never had children. But this woman claimed otherwise. Then she smiled. And your grandfather wasn't the person who started all of this. She pointed at the ledger. He was trying to stop it. Marlowe stepped beside her. And now you finally have the last piece. I looked down at the ledger. There was one final page I hadn't opened. I turned it. At the top was a sentence. Never trust the person who tells you the story first. Underneath was a photograph. It showed Alara standing beside the woman in front of me. But the photograph had been taken 43 years ago. The woman hadn't aged nearly as much as she should have. I looked at her again. She smiled. Then she said, You've been asking who built the hidden room. She paused. I did. I stared at the woman standing beside Marlowe. For several seconds, nobody moved. She looked at the photograph in my hand and then at me. My name is Vera, she said. Alara was my mother. Leora stepped forward. You're saying you've known about us all these years? Vera nodded. I knew about you before you were born. I asked why she had hidden herself. Because your grandfather wanted me hidden. That answer confused me. She explained that Alara had discovered the organization long before any of us were involved. She had created the hidden rooms to protect people who needed somewhere to disappear. But eventually, she discovered that someone inside the group was using those safe houses for another purpose. They weren't just hiding people. They were collecting information about them. Alara wanted to expose the system. Vera helped her. But before they could, Corvin discovered what they were doing. He tried to take the ledger. Alara refused. So she divided the information into pieces and hid them throughout the neighborhood. The hidden room beneath my house was only one part of the plan. The real ledger contained the complete story. I looked down at it. Then why did everyone lie to me? Vera looked at my adoptive mother. Because the moment you knew the truth, Corvin would know where to look. My adoptive mother nodded. She explained that she had spent years protecting me because Arlen had trusted her. She had never wanted to erase my family. She wanted me to have a normal life. Leora asked Vera why she had stayed hidden. Vera answered quietly. Because Corvin believed I was dead. She told us she had been living under different identities for decades. Every few years she moved. She watched the people connected to Alara from a distance. She knew about Marlowe. She knew about Sable. She knew about my mother. And she knew that one day I would find the house. I asked her the question that had been bothering me since the beginning. Who left the photograph of me on the table? Vera smiled. I did. And the Sunday notes? She shook her head. No. I looked at Leora. She gave me a small smile. I did. Everything finally made sense. The notes had never been meant to scare me. Leora had been trying to guide me toward the truth without exposing herself. She had known I would eventually buy the house. She had been waiting for me to find the hidden room. I asked her why she didn't just tell me. Because I didn't know who was watching. She looked at Marlowe. And I wasn't sure if I could trust him. Marlowe sighed. I was protecting you. Leora shook her head. You were protecting Vera. He didn't deny it. He explained that Vera had spent decades keeping the final ledger safe. Marlowe had stayed close because Corvin was still searching for her. Then I opened the final pages of the ledger. There was a complete list of names. People who had helped. People who had betrayed others. People who had disappeared. People who had been protected. But the final page contained something unexpected. A letter from Alara. It was addressed to me. I started reading. If you are holding this book, then the house has finally chosen the right person. I smiled despite myself. She explained that the house wasn't built to hide a secret. It was built to protect a choice. She had spent years protecting people who had nowhere else to go. She wanted the next person who found the ledger to decide what happened to the information. Release it. Destroy it. Or keep it hidden. She didn't tell me what to choose. She simply wrote. Truth has value only when it is used to protect someone, not control them. I looked around the room. For years, everyone had been fighting over information. Corvin wanted it for power. My grandfather wanted it to expose him. Arlen wanted it to protect us. Alara wanted it to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. And now it was in my hands. I closed the ledger. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. We copied everything. The records were given to investigators who could verify every name and every document. The originals stayed hidden. Nobody would be able to use them to manipulate the people listed inside. Corvin was eventually arrested. The investigation uncovered years of hidden activity. Some people were innocent. Some were guilty. Some had simply been afraid. Marlowe cooperated fully. Sable did too. My adoptive mother finally told me everything she had kept from me. And for the first time, I didn't feel angry. I understood why she had lied. Not every secret had been meant to hurt me. Some had been meant to give me a chance to grow up without fear. Leora stayed in my life. We spent months getting to know each other. It was strange at first. We had the same birthday, the same eyes, even some of the same expressions. But we were also completely different people. She loved old music. I couldn't stand it. She liked quiet mornings. I preferred late nights. We laughed about it. We had spent our entire lives believing we were alone. Now we had each other. One afternoon, I went back to the house alone. The hidden room was empty. The photographs were gone. The boxes had been removed. The walls looked ordinary again. I stood in the middle of the room and remembered the first night I had found it. I remembered the photograph of myself. The message on the table. You were supposed to find this room last. Now I understood what it meant. I wasn't supposed to find the room first. I was supposed to find myself first. Before I left, I noticed something under the old wooden table. A small envelope. My name was written on it. I opened it. Inside was one final note from Alara. You may never know every answer. I smiled. That is okay. Then I read the final line. A life isn't defined by the secrets you inherit. It is defined by what you choose to do with the truth. I folded the note and placed it in my pocket. I walked outside. The house looked different in the sunlight. It no longer felt abandoned. It felt like a place that had finally finished its job. A few weeks later, I decided to keep the house. Not because of the hidden rooms. Not because of the history. But because it was the first place where every version of my family had finally come together. My biological mother visited. My adoptive mother came too. Leora helped me repair the old porch. Sable planted flowers in the backyard. Even Marlowe came once. He stood near the gate and looked at the house. You know, he said, Alara would have been proud. I asked him why. He smiled. Because you didn't become what everyone expected you to become. I looked back at the house. For years, I had believed my life was built on lies. Now I understood something different. My life had been built by people who were afraid of losing me. They made mistakes. They hid things. They sometimes made choices I didn't understand. But underneath all of it was one simple truth. They wanted me to survive. And I finally knew why. The house had never really been haunted. There had never been a ghost waiting behind the walls. There had only been memories, people, secrets, and a story that had been waiting for the right person to finish it. I still keep the first photograph I found. The one showing me standing outside the house before I ever bought it. I used to look at it and wonder who had been watching me. Now I look at it and remember something much simpler. Someone had been waiting for me to come home. And after everything that happened, I finally understood that the house wasn't where I found a hidden room. It was where I found the family I never knew I had. Would you keep a house after discovering a secret like this, or would you walk away from it forever?